On the broadcast tonight, we focus on the latest political tussle between the opposition National Super Alliance, NASA, and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, and by extension, the Jubilee administration. And this is a debate on whether or not tallying of results at the constituency level should be final. The IEBC has gone to the Court of Appeal to contest a High Court ruling that presidential results declared at the constituency level be final. The Election Commission now says it is simply seeking clarifications on that High Court ruling and how it aligns itself with the Constitution and the Elections Act. The opposition has threatened to boycott the August 8th general election if the appellate court overturns that High Court ruling. NASA even goes further to accuse the IEBC of advancing the interest of the Jubilee administration. Tonight, we seek to move this national debate forward. Good evening, I am Ben Kitili, Nairobi. Choice 2017 begins right now, and with me, of course, my guests are already in studio. I have with me political risk analyst, I should mention, Dismas Mokua, and of course, Jubilee strategist Brian Mbogwa, not new to the show. They shall be joining me to discuss and to put some perspective into this particular issue. We're also seeking to find out what do you think about this debate. Tell us what you think. That is what we are asking you on our poll question. We're asking you, was the IEBC justified to go to court over the High Court ruling on result tallying? Tell us what you think. Text us your yes or no opinion plus a brief comment to our studio line 22155. You can also join this conversation online on Twitter at Ben_Kitili, at KTN News. The hashtag is Choice2017. Let's begin from where this began, the latest one, of course, and that is yesterday when the National Super Alliance, the five principal, went to the county of Nakuru, holding their first rally since unveiling Raila Odinga as their presidential flag bearer. All of them speaking about this particular issue, which turned out to take the center stage, saying that they will boycott the 2017 August 8th general election if the Court of Appeal overturns that High Court ruling that the presidential election results declared at the constituency level should be final. Let's listen in.
Kura ikihesabika kule mashinani, uamuzi huo ndio wa mwisho. Sisi kama wananasa hatutakubali kwenda Bomas tena.
Ile appeal wamepeleka kwa mahakama ambayo jaji mkuu anatarajiwa aweke pamoja na Peace Board. Tunawauliza kama wananasa waondoe mara moja.
Kama mahakama itabadilisha hiyo sheria, hakuna uchaguzi Kenya.
And the latest development on that is that the IEBC has sent a statement late this afternoon seeking to clarify on that issue, saying that they have had reports appearing in the media to the extent that the IEBC must withdraw that case. The IEBC says that the appeal at the Court of Appeal is in regard to seeking clarification of the ruling of the High Court about declaration of results and interpretations of the results of how that ruling aligns with articles of the Constitution of Kenya, including Articles 138(3) and 138(10), and the implementation of amended Sections 39 of the Elections Act. The IEBC urging any players that may have an issue with the appeal to ask the courts to be enjoined in the case, or alternatively await the completion of the case and seek a judicial intervention. Going ahead in the statement to say that they want to remind all political players in the country that IEBC, just like any other Kenyan, has the right to seek the protection of the judiciary and the courts on matters that they feel need legal interpretation. That is the latest statement from the IEBC. Now joining me to put some perspective into this is Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst, and Brian Mbogwa, who is a Jubilee strategy. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me tonight. First of all, let's start where this all began. Let me start with you, Dismas. What is your take on this whole issue? Should presidential results be declared at the constituency level? Let's start with the principal issues.
Well, Kenya is a constitutional democracy, and the role of the judiciary is very supreme and it's in the middle of all our political, socio-economic lifestyle. And I think every Kenyan has got the right or responsibility or duty. If you feel aggrieved in any manner, you must go to the judiciary and have your matter sorted out. But now when you start looking at the reasoning or given by NASA, you see there's a bit of merit and there's demerit. But NASA's reasoning comes from the Kriegler report, that when people were accused of having stolen elections, Kriegler said the manipulation was not at Bomas, it was not at a national level. It was at a constituency level. That's where figures were manipulated. And you remember now in Kenya we've got a new verb called Tharakanithi. That from Tharakanithi to Bomas, some figures were manipulated. And even if you go through the reports of the last general election, people actually said that there were two factions within the IEBC. There are people who are aligned to President Kenyatta would manipulate results in his favor, and the people who are aligned to Raila Odinga would manipulate results in his favor. Actually, Kriegler really said that there was no independent way of verifying or even establishing a winner. Now, when we come to this case, ideally, the chairman of IEBC is the one who is supposed to announce and declare the winner. But for NASA, they said they want to cure this mischief because there is a mutual trust, or rather mistrust, between NASA and Jubilee. If you speak to Brian Mbogwa on a very good day, when he's honest, he'll tell you he thinks NASA is going to steal the election. And if you speak to NASA, NASA will tell you Jubilee is going to steal the election. And you've got people in both parties with so much political capital that at the flick of their fingers, the nation can go up in flames. And I think for the people who are saying, have the returning officer give the figures at the constituency level and that be final, there is merit in that. Because in any event, IEBC or the commissioners are supposed to ensure that the systems are bulletproof, that the word coming out from the returning officer at a constituency level is as good as the Bible is very solid.
So as you say, this is based on the 2007 bungled elections, you know, the Kriegler report came
and also
out of
2013.
that, and 2013 as well.
Yeah.
Brand, from where you sit, what do you think about this issue of declaring presidential election results at the constituency level versus them being declared at the National Tallying Center, where the IEBC chairman, who is the presidential returning officer, will be based at?
First of all, I'd like to say that Jubilee has no way interfered or been involved in the recent judgment and has not even enjoined in the appeal. It's purely an IEBC matter. And IEBC is the body mandated to conduct election in Kenya. And the Constitution gives 3 levels of returning officer. There's the constituency returning officer, who's in charge of the MCA and the MP election. Then there's a county returning officer, who's in charge of Senate, Women Rep, and the governor election. And then there's a chairman of IEBC, who's the returning officer for the presidential election. And according to my reasoning, in any case of appeal, it's the returning officer who is charged. And mostly, if you check most rulings on the recent appeal, it's the integrity of the returning officer that makes the court either to nullify or to upheld the election. So I would like to view it on IEBC part of the other end of IEBC, because in case of a petition of a presidential election, if this ruling is upheld, it will mean that the petitioner must charge also all the 290 constituency returning officers. And also, if IEBC is allowed to verify at the national level, it will help a lot to deter collusion between returning officer and some parties to willfully change the results at the constituency level.
Which is more of a risk? People colluding at the constituency level to change results, or there being discrepancy between what's declared at the constituency and what's declared at Bomas?
I think at the constituency level is more dangerous than the national level, based on the previous Kriegler report, because he said that manipulation were done at strongholds of different parties. So we've seen in this country agents of different parties being chased away from the opposition stronghold, and the other party stronghold chasing our opposition agents. So in those areas, it's very difficult to determine how a person, a returning officer, will declare the results if they will not be verified at the national level. I think the national level verification helps to deter the actual doctoring of results at constituency level.
Do you agree?
Well, Mbuga has got merit. You know, when you look at the extreme side, because now the High Court ruling says the results as announced by the returning officer, that's final. And if you're to reverse it, it has to go through a court petition. Now, the extreme side is, if there are disputes, there is the potential of us facing, after the general elections, 290 petitions. And you know, that would be really extreme, and it would be a workload that probably the judiciary may not be able to handle in the short space of time given. But the principal question is, if everybody is happy with the results at the constituency level, why should, say, IEBC or Jubilee or NASA be worried about the outcome? Because before the returning officer declares, there's now a procedure which is very elaborate. All the political parties are supposed to have their agents. The civil society is going to be accredited by IEBC. There'll be media. There'll be so many stakeholders who will be able to look at the figures and verify them. So that if an announcement is done, say, in say Gatundu South, that Raila Odinga has gotten 20,000 votes. Those 20,000 votes are the ones which are supposed to reflect at the National Tallying Center. It must not be the case that those 20,000 votes now converts and a zero disappears and then it's 2,000. And the same obtains, say, if Kenyatta gets 40,000 votes in Bondo, that must reflect. Because in the last election, it's very clear, and I attended a number of the sessions of the Kriegler report, that it would depend on the reporting structure, that if there's a returning officer who doesn't like Raila Odinga, they would manipulate the figures. If they don't like Mwai Kibaki, they would manipulate the figures. And I don't know why IEBC is very nervous on this matter, because if anything, it's their own officers who will be making these announcements. And the duty of the presidential returning officer would be merely to collate. And I think as a nation, we must accept that in as much as this scenario looks extreme, but we're in a very peculiar station whereby, or rather a peculiar space in our political space, whereby elections is a matter of life and death. Right now in Kenya, literally everything has come to a standstill because we are waiting for those elections. And we cannot allow a few issues of interpretation of the relevant statutes to complicate matters. But however, we cannot fault IEBC, because IEBC has got all the rights to go to the Court of Appeal and seek that clarification.
Fair enough. You can join this conversation online by we are asking you on our poll question: was the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC right to go to court over that ruling by the High Court? And that is the same question I want to ask you, Brian. Do you think the IEBC has a right to go and seek interpretation on this? And then where do you think the High Court was coming from?
You know, I think the High Court looked at the 2012 regulation of IEBC and stripped off the power of the National Returning Officer for the presidential election, handed it over to the constituency returning officer, because in case of a presidential election, the Constitution say they should be held in the 290 constituency. I think that's where the court got that from. But again, the Constitution is very, very clear, and the definition in Election Act of a returning officer is very clear on their roles. County and constituency returning officer are responsible for certain elections, and they are answerable to certain courts on those elections. National returning officer, which is the IEBC chairman, is responsible for presidential election. And it's naive to believe that if I'm the chairman of IEBC, and I'll be the one who is answerable to the Supreme Court in case of a petition, to allow any other person to do my work, of which I'll be the one to be charged in case of anything. It's very wrong. I think IEBC has every right to go to court, since they are the body mandated to conduct election. And fairly, IEBC is also a powerful body which should be allowed to work independently without much interference.
All right.
But Ben, I beg to take a divergent view. Anybody in Kenya who casts aspersion on the integrity or ability of IEBC to deliver a free and fair election must come out today and raise that noise, make a lot of noise, because we don't want anybody to start blaming IEBC after the elections. So if today you smell a rat at IEBC, you think they're not going to be able to deliver a free, fair and credible election, you must make that noise, because we don't want this situation to arise whereby somebody says, I knew IEBC was going to do a mistake, but I didn't have the opportunity. We must make noise today. But again, because of the polluted environment where we work in, with a lot of deceit, there are a lot of conmen in the political space, when IEBC decides to appeal, then obviously people in NASA begin to smell a rat. They begin to ask, is IEBC acting on their own motion, or is there an external force pushing IEBC? And in the unlikely event, or maybe you're not allowed to discuss this, but if, say, the Court of Appeal reverses the decision of the High Court, who is likely to be the principal beneficiary of that reversal? Is it going to be Jubilee? Is it going to be NASA? Now, when people look at the mathematics of that decision, then they begin to say that if the Court of Appeal reverses this, the principal beneficiary is likely to be Jubilee. And that's why NASA is beginning to make noise.
A lot of noise.
Yeah.
But to add on that, you know, the courts act on matters of law.
All right.
They don't care with the political sideshows on who it will favor. So if it's within the law and the High Court erred, then it's up to a Court of Appeal to determine whether to appeal the decision or do away with it.
But again, this is complicated. You recall in another show we said that the president is a very powerful man in Kenya, and his word has got the impact of a law. You recall when he was doing campaigns in Kisii, he said, we have given Kisii a position, and the person in charge of the Supreme Court is our appointee. We appointed him. Now, that raises a lot of mistrust within NASA, because they are claiming the judiciary has now been aligned to favor the interest of Jubilee. It may not be the case, because, you know, the president, when he was in Kisii, he was not addressing IEBC. He was addressing voters back in the village. And also Raila Odinga, when he was in Nakuru yesterday, he was probably not addressing IEBC. His primary audience were the people who had come out to cheer him up. So maybe again, IEBC needs to be very discerning, not to imagine that in fact Raila was addressing them, because I think it would be very naive for NASA to say they're going to boycott the elections.
All right. Do you think the president shot himself in the foot?
No.
By declaring to the people of Kisii that he has given them a position?
You know, Jubilee controls Parliament, and Parliament approves these candidates for various positions, and parties do take position on who to give which position. And I think Jubilee gave a vote of confidence to the new Chief Justice. But then again, to add on that, everybody is aligned anywhere. Even the IEBC chairman was a life member of ODM.
Right.
But when you take him to court, the court will look from at what point, whether he was biased because he was from my ODM side, or he will discharge his duty.
Let's speak about NASA, the National Super Alliance. What they said yesterday, we did play those clips in the beginning of the show. Do you think NASA are justified to issue ultimatums about, you know, this case that is before the appellate court, and say that they will boycott the elections in August if it doesn't rule in their favor?
No, in my view, that was the wrong way to look at it. Because in as much as President Kenyatta said he appointed the Chief Justice, the NASA should be very careful on this, because that one can be interpreted as an attempt to hold the judiciary at ransom, even to compromise the decision-making process of those judges. I think what NASA should have done is just to address the core issues affecting Kenyans, which Mbogo would disagree with, but, you know, the cost of unga, and give us a solution on how they're going to run the nation, instead of issuing threats to the judiciary. But on the flip side, one again would expect that those judges at the Court of Appeal are men and women of very strong will, and in making their decisions, they're going to make the decisions informed by the law and what is good for the nation. And for me, I think at some stage, the judges are called upon, in many cases, to make a ruling which secures the interest of our nation, Kenya. And you cannot take Raila Odinga's threats, you cannot ignore them. You recall when he said that we are going to have an election in 2017 with the new commissioners. Most people thought that he was just making a joke, but now we have a new team. That's why people say that if Raila Odinga tells you that you're going to be a parent, you better prepare for that. So that's something you cannot ignore. But at the end of the day, really, let's ask ourselves, what works for Kenya. What is so wrong in us taking to the bank the results as announced by returning officer if everything has been done in a very solid manner? Because at some stage people are beginning to ask, is it the case that the national, or rather the IEBC chairman, does not have faith in his own staff, in his ability to deliver? And if he doesn't have that faith, why can't he come up with those, what we normally say, have those predictable systems for unpredictable outcomes, so that everybody is sure whatever the returning officer is going to deliver is actually the case. And in any event, all the information that is going to come to the national level is just going to be a very simple software that what has the returning officer given, and that's what is tallied at the national level.
Right.
And really what we are addressing here is what Kriegler said. That Kenya, we love politics so much, we adore politics so much, we can even kill because of politics. So let's avoid going into a messy situation simply because of we are not sure of the role of a returning officer.
Speaking about that, Brian, do you think Dismas did mention about let everyone who has any qualms that he has with the election commission come out and speak now? Do you think it's a healthy thing what NASA are doing? Let them speak now, they iron out any issues that they have. Do you agree with that?
Yes, they can speak at any given point, but they should not intimidate the judiciary. They should let the judiciary do their work as they do politics as their career. Because in this sense, I would like to differ with Dismas, because the chairman of IEBC simply has been stripped of what is given to him by the Constitution. He did not just wake up and say he's the the presidential returning officer. It's powers given to him by the Constitution. And once the High Court delegated those election to constituency returning officer, the IEBC sought for clarification on how now they will conduct the election in that scenario. Because from the Constitution and the regulation, it was the norms. That's why they had set presidential tallying center always. Then if it's only 290 forms, they can as well tally them at their offices. Just adding 290 numbers, there's no need for a presidential tallying center, number one. Number two, there's no need for an expensive voter transmission system for IEBC, because the reason why we were putting that into place is because we wanted random results from different polling station, so that the returning officer does tally results from the polling stations. And for IEBC to confirm, it's very simple. They just take the forms of all those polling stations and do their own tallying to see if it's the same with the returning officer. And which the one for the polling station, to me, is supreme, because the returning officer do not have the numbers in his head to determine candidate A got this vote, candidate B got this vote. He gets them from the polling station where actual voting takes place. What is wrong with IEBC verifying those papers from those polling stations to confirm that this plus this add up to what this is saying? It's a simple mathematical thing.
But Ben, it's important to put on Raila Odinga's shoes. He says his votes have been stolen on 2 occasions. And when his technical team do the evaluation, when they do the systems audit, they say his votes have been stolen at the constituency level. So you'd imagine it's very jittery. The mention of a returning officer at the constituency level makes him very nervous. And I see absolutely nothing wrong in accommodating his interest. And the High Court has already said that there's nothing wrong in that. And in fact, there's a prior case of Shabal and Joe, which makes a similar ruling, a similar undertaking. So really, I don't see anything wrong in that. But we must wait now for the Court of Appeal to give the position forward.
So
but
this has a precedent.
Yeah.
I think
when we go to the elections, it would be naive for us to assume that NASA is not a key stakeholder, that Raila Odinga is not a key stakeholder. So it's important for us to accommodate his wishes, provided they're not outside the Constitution. And I doubt whether those High Court judges were so ridiculous, were so insane, so as to give a ruling which doesn't stand on any law.
No, just to answer him, we've had so many successful appeals in this republic. So in some cases, the judges might look at one provision and ignore the other. So it's not unique to say that those judges did not see anything of value.
But does the IEBC risk, what's the correct word to use, like making NASA the enemy at this particular stage of the electioneering period?
You know, first of all, NASA was not even the petitioner for the case. It was Maina Kiai and other civil society guys.
Right.
Second of all, NASA thinks that rigging is done at the national level, not at the constituency level. But they know very well their staffing, they do it at the constituency level. That's why they want it not to be verified at any other level.
So you're accusing them of stuffing?
That was Krigla said.
All right.
Well, Krigla said every political player in Kenya engages in stuffing.
It was only in
Both
Bita.
sides.
It was only in Bita where we had 102% turnout in 2007. 102%.
All right,
turnout.
fair enough. Let's hold that thoughts. You're watching Choice 2017 here on KTN News. When we return after this quick commercial break, we shall speak about the latest reactions on this. Murimi Mwangi has been following this story for us. We shall be talking about the politics of it. The presidential candidate for NASA, Raila Odinga, accusing IEBC of advancing Jubilee's political interests. We shall talk about that before we wind up the show. Don't go too far. Remember, we're asking you our poll question. Do you think the IEBC was right to go to court over that ruling by the High Court? Keep telling us what you think, texting your views to 22155, tweeting us at Ben_Kitili at KTN News and on hashtag Choice 2017. We are back.